This is lesson 1.1, the very first lesson in the book. Today's date is August 23rd, 2016. Our lesson starts off by talking about what is independent. So if I were to describe a person as being independent, what does that mean? What does that person, how could you describe that person? Yes?
They don't need to rely on something else.
So they don't rely on anything else. So they don't rely on anything else. This marker thing has been funny. Okay, so they don't rely on anything else. Other descriptions of what are some things in life that are independent? One thing that blew my mind that I found out, did you know that with a starfish, there's the starfish and then it has like its tentacles / legs. Did you know that its legs are independent of the starfish? Like if the starfish says, oh, I want to go there, its legs are like, that's nice. I'm not going there. And they don't have to go there. Isn't that weird? They're independent. The legs are independent of the starfish.
How do they move? Wow.
Okay, yeah.
Same thing with an octopus. Each arm is kind of got its own brain.
Each arm has its own brain of
Yeah,
an
so
octopus.
multi-brains.
Very cool, very cool. So in the sun, does the sun depend on anything that we do to come up and go down in the day?
No.
In other words, does the earth need anything that we do to spin?
No.
No, so that would be something very independent. On the other hand, there's dependent. How would you describe dependent? Like a dependent person would what?
Oh, they rely on other people.
Yeah, so relies on other people. Relies on others. Relies on others. In fact, it needs, in order for the dependent thing to know what it needs to do, it needs something independent. Like a newborn baby would need its mother, who is independent, right? In order to survive. Or if we were to talk about plants are pretty dependent, right? What do they depend on? What do they depend on, Keith?
The sun and rain.
The sun and rain or sprinkler, whatever, right? So it depends on water and rain. And then good soil even. There's all these things that it depends on, right? How did you get to school today? Raise your hand if you rode in a car. Raise your hand if you walked. Rode your bike. Nice, okay. Let's just talk about the road out here that's by the hospital. What's the speed limit on that road?
40.
It's actually 35. Tell your parents. Okay, so it's 35, and I want you to write this down again on your notes. 35, and please write out, how could you abbreviate miles per hour?
MPH.
MPH, but we're going to write out miles per hour. So if I'm going along, I'm going 35 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, it never changes, pretend like there's no stop signs or anything like that. How far would I go in an hour? 35 miles, right? Not a big deal, pretty easy. So 35 miles in 1 hour. So do the miles depend on the time, or does the time depend on the miles? What would you say?
The miles depend on the time.
Yeah, how far you go depends on how long you go for, right? So this is what I've learned that you can do. With any of these problems, the first bunch of problems that you're going to be given, they have sentences or scenarios that you read, and you have to decide what's independent and what's dependent. So if there's the word per, these are ones that are very nice. So I take the per and I circle the per, and then off to the side. So in your notes, we go like this. The dependent, so I'm just going to do D for dependent, per independent, or I. D per I. So that means the miles are what? Since it went before per. Dependent. And the hours are
Time.
Independent. And so then when we actually have that problem, then this is what we do. So I like to circle it, underline the D and the I, but then we're not done. We need to actually write it out. in the actual official answers of the book, it'll say that you have to write independent quantity is, and then a whole sentence. We're just going to, just for sake of time, cut short on that. So with this one, the independent would be the time. And what is the time measured in? Hours. And if you get stuck on like that, just think, okay, hours. What are hours measuring? Oh, they're measuring time. What do miles measure? Distance. So distance in miles. So then we had an example. So in your book, so number 2, this is number 3 on the homework. It talked about going and getting coffee. So it says this person goes and gets coffee every morning, and it's $4.25 for a cup of coffee. It doesn't say like per. There's no word per there. So the trick is, when they don't have the word per, is kind of reword that. Figure out what your quantities and see if you can put it in a sentence that uses a little short phrase that uses per. Like we used miles per hour. So if we talked about the going and getting coffee, what are the 2 values or the 2 quantities that you have with coffee? What would you say?
The amount of cups of coffee.
So the cups of coffee
And the price.
and the total cost or the price. Yeah, the cups of coffee and the price. So does the cups of coffee depend on the price? Does the cups of coffee depend on the total cost, or does the total cost depend on the number of cups of coffee? What would you say?
Price depends on the cups.
The cost depends on the cups. So cost, so then just to give myself a little hint, I would do this to remind myself. I would do dollars per cups. And then so for the independent, it would be the number of cups. And the dependent is the cost in dollars. And just as an explanation for this, because can you go into a coffee shop or anywhere that offers drinks, 7-Eleven with a Slurpee, right? Can you go in there and say, I have 75 cents, give me as much coffee as that buys? Does it work like that? No, it doesn't work like that. Or Slurpee or whatever. It doesn't work like that. You can't just say, this is how much I have, give me how much you can. They'll sell it per cup, right? They don't sell half a Slurpee for half the price. Like, you have to buy the whole thing. Make sense? You can buy different sizes, but you can't like buy half of it. In fact, I had a friend once that said, can you pour me a medium-sized milkshake, but but then fill it up to the top in a large cup and then fill it up? Does that make sense? He wanted he said a medium-sized milkshake in a large cup and then top it off the rest of the way. So what was he really ordering? A large, okay. All right. Another one on the homework is number 7, I think it is. No, 6. The skydiving. So the cost per jump. So that would be so you had to reword it so it was cost per jump. Okay, the next part of the notes or the next segment or section of the homework, you had to draw this little mini graph in your notes. So will you please draw this little mini graph right here in your notes. So independent goes horizontal and dependent goes vertical. So then the next section, which is section 7 through 12, it asks you to figure out which story goes with which graph. I wish I could say this is the easiest way to do all of these, but they're all kind of different. So there's not really one rule that you could use for everything. So I'm going to leave that up to you to figure out how to do. And we're not going to spend much time on it in class, but at home, go through and do it. An example of what to do is on number 7. The answers are in blue. The next part is number 12 through 13. So here's number 13. And this is where you're just supposed to label it. How I do it is I start out by circling per, and then after it is the I, and before it is the D. So I said D miles, okay, well that's the distance in miles, and then I was the time in hours. So that's what you're supposed to do for all these. So number 14, for example, we have gallons per minute. So independent minute and gallons are dependent. So what do minutes measure? Time. So on the horizontal axis, on that one, you should put time in minutes. And then on the vertical one, gallons, what are the gallons measuring? Water. Yeah, good, the water. So you can put water in gallons. Good. So that's the end of lesson 1. You just have to do those things. Any questions on lesson 1? No?